Hey there, everybody. I'm Brent Stafford from RegWatch by regulatorwatch.com. I think the opening worked there, which is glorious. I am back. I literally left the live stream that we just did and went and ran around, visited some vape shops here in Vancouver, and got the lowdown on what's kind of happening in BC. Sounds like that there's going to be an active resistance against our good friends from the BC Liberal Party that are virtue signaling, for the lack of a better word. And I'm going to actually start to put some fine points on actually what the right way to describe what is going on. So I just literally got back, ran some errands, got back, and I still have my makeup on, for crap's sake. So I went, well, you know what? I might as well do a little bit of a rant. This is not planned, but the one thing, though, that I did plan today was to have some reference books with me, because Dr. Shahab is, he's got a PhD in health psychology, and one of his master's degree is in philosophy. And you really need a lot of philosophy to understand what's going on with the maniacal push here to ban vaping, because, I mean, it's political. And I've said this many times. I'm going to continue to say this. It does vaping a disservice to believe that the sole issues can be found, say, for instance, with big tobacco and its desire to keep its market share. That's certainly the case, but that is not all or even like the whole part of the story anymore. It's definitely the MSA money has got something to do with it. There's no doubt. Progressive public health and the anti-vaping progressive pressure groups are suckling at the teats of big tobacco, and so are the states in all of the progressive states that are moving to do all the banning. So that's absolutely fundamentally is true. There's no doubt about that. The tobacco control industry is a parasite on the smokers and those vapors that are going to return to smoking, which we know has already started happening and will continue to happen. This is the largest public health scandal in American history, unfolding right now as we speak. So, yeah. So I brought in some books. So I brought in some books there with Jacob Greer, the author that we had on in our last live stream. And I actually routinely bring in like 2 bags of books sometimes, and a lot of times the same books. Sometimes I think in my early live streams with you guys, I might have pulled 1 or 2 out when I was maybe doing that Brent Stafford show when I was all upset, back in 2017, because everybody was losing their mind over, so many issues, which, by the way, they still lost their mind, and now, and all those same people, to a large extent, are, involved in this vaping ban, in the hysteria. Don't ever let yourself be mistaken for the bright, shiny suits of public health, or the coiffed bureaucrat, administrative state kind of lobbyist look. I mean, if you ever look at a public health person of any stature within public health, they're going to have a sheen to them that is much similar to the lobbyists that are lobbying the government and usually the public health agencies. I'm not casting any dispersions on Health Canada. I'm not making specific statements at all, just in general, and mostly about the United States of America, which, let me say that the U.S. vaping industry has let the entire world down for not being prepared for calamities such as this, which is fairly expected with such a risk kind of a product that this is. So how the U.S. vaping industry could be in a position where there was no PR, no crisis communication, no goodwill or relationships built with any media network, right? How come that is? How could that possibly be? No wall of knowledge was wrapped around President Trump to protect him from the progressive nattering that was certainly going to be in his ear. How could it not, right? So there's some complete failed leadership by the U.S. vaping industry wrapped around all of this. And then what's happened in the U.S. is taking down Canada, and it's moving to the U.K. I mean, the progressives are not going to be happy until they're walking through the streets shooting every last survivor. That's what they do, right? That's what they do. There's no bargaining. There's no compromise. So it's tragic. It's tragic, tragic, tragic. So it's impossible. I mean, like, I'd have to do like, I'd have to like be Argon or something like that. Some of those other guys that, can sit down and map out a narrative of the right pictures with, these kinds of stuff and take you through it. I'm not there yet. I make news, do interviews and that kind of thing. And I do write. But so this is going to be crap in terms of trying to tell a story. But I've been meaning to definitely put some meat, a little bit more, around what it means to be progressive. So I brought in these books just because I always are bringing something in. And then I thought, well, when I took the Rab line back downtown to our studios, which, by the way, we have great studio here in downtown Vancouver, right? So when we're saying, hey, we need some funding and stuff, it's not like we're doing this out of our, the back of the garage or anything like that. I mean, we've got a full production facility. We've got full green screens and lighting grids and stuff over there, rack computers over there doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then we've got all of our gear that we take when we need to go to the States to do 3-camera shoots, which is, our to the States gear. So, 3 GH4 cameras, packed LED lighting, and then all of that kind of stuff so we can really get small and mobile and get where we need to go, right? And then we've got our full big cameras and stuff like that all here in the studio. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we've got a full professional television production facility here, and we've been dedicating that to covering the vaping issue, and we want to do more. So, okay, I am making a bit of a pitch. If you get a chance, please go to support.regulatorwatch.com and take a look. We've actually redone our, well, not redone. I think probably the best thing to say is that we actually finished it. Just in time for the industry to explode, we have actually finished our support website, and we're looking forward to trying to corral some people there if we can. But yeah, so it's nice and clean, which is good for me. We've got our vaping coverage stats right here for vaping regulations. This is great. We don't do, and I all power to, the guys that do great, YouTube videos, year after year after year after year on the more kind of entertaining stuff about vaping and the cultural stuff about vaping, the vaping stuff. We do regulations, and that kind of thing. It's not often that it gets, a huge, big draw. And so we've done a great job and highly engaged, obviously, too, as well. The main part of our the things that we're saying, just like everybody else, right? It's a really bad time. It's an extremely bad time. And for us in 2019, we put together all of our support from industry has been project-based, whereas before in the years past, we've been able to do like we knew who was supporting us month after month. Somebody maybe drop off every quarter, something like that. That happens. Business is business, and people are doing other things. But for us, in 2019, we ended up in a position where, except for Flavor Art, which is fantastic, God bless Sean Casey, right? And all of you should be sending emails to Flavor Art and Sean Casey for RegWatch being alive, right? Because he has paid for so much coverage and kept our coverage going. He's dedicated to the vaping industry, and you got to imagine flavor bans. That's at the heart of his business. He's Flavor Art. So big shout out to Sean Casey, Flavor Art, anchor supporter of RegWatch. He started the CVA, and so yeah, I mean, if you got the ability to send him a note, I would do that, or just send it to like info@Flavor Art. Anyhow, that was a heartfelt thanks from us at RegWatch to Flavor Art and Sean Casey, no doubt. So, yeah. So, but the key thing, right, for us is that we really want to break out of content connected to funding, to like projects and stuff. We really want to spread that funding out, spread out our costs, which are not huge, right? You'd be surprised how little we've been able to run this operation. I don't believe we've taken in any more than 160,000 in a year, and that's like total, and run the whole operation and personal salary. I mean, that's crazy. Most of the time it's like 120, 140, so it's crazy. And that also covers our Facebook ads. So, you know, when we're trying to get out there and spread this cost out, that's what we're doing with the with this. Plus, too, as well, got to tell you, you know, it's just more independent if we can spread the cost out. So here you go. And we have got a little bit in. That's gone up a couple hundred, $300 or something like that. It's geo-targeted, so Canada will see Canada, US will see US. One of the things, and we're going to get onto this book stuff in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that I said this. It's been very difficult, the entire 4 years covering this issue, in terms of splitting the baby between Canada and the US. And what do I mean by that? Well, while it's vaping, there are different issues. So Canada doesn't have the FDA, right? US doesn't have Health Canada. When the industry and vapors want to see stories that speak to them, they want to know that it's at least connecting, you know, in their neck of the woods. And so, you know, I didn't want to launch a fundraiser by saying, okay, Canada, go get this, and, you know, bring this up, and then US, and be able to compare the two. Plus, with the currency difference and stuff like that, we geo-targeted the site. So what you're seeing on the US side is US raised. What you're seeing on the Canada side is Canada was raised. And unless you're VPNing it or whatever, which you can do, right? We're not making it a competition. But though at some point, I will be saying to all of you, here's how Canada's done, here's how the US is done. And seriously, like at some point, the US, your dollar is worth like $1.37 here. So you've got 330 million people. 330 million people. I mean, how many millions of vapors, right? Canada's just this wee little country. And 80% of all of RegWatch's content that's been targeted about US stories has been paid for by Canadians. Because they know how important it is that the US gets their shit sorted out. So what happens in the US affects the entire world. And RegWatch coverage of the US primarily, now, Flavor Art is U.S. coverage, but Flavor Art's Canadian, all right? So at some point, we'll be saying, U.S., please help, because your dollar goes so much farther. All right, there you go. So, and then lastly on this, because I am kind of proud that we got this up and it's all nice and clean. Oh, the one thing, too, is that right here on the form, you see group identifier. This is pretty slick. So if you're a vape shop, and you want to get on our, you know, monthly Rockstar, you know, Heroes board, which I'll show you in a second, then, you know, get some of your customers together, you know, make some one-time donations. Most importantly, though, for us is the monthly. We'll take a smaller monthly contribution than a big one-time, right? Because it makes sense, because then we can plan. I need to be able to know that I can book interviews for next month instead of worrying about next month, and then I can't book interviews, right? That's the whole point, right? So that's why we need to get the monthly sustained, so I can start separating fundraising from content creation. And that means me, like separating me from it. I don't have to do it every couple of weeks. So, and then, so you could just write in your vape shop there, get your customers to write in your vape shop there, and I get all that information. So, you know, put together $500 of monthly, probably 250 will do it, but whatever, we can work that out. But do that, and you know, I'm interested in seeing how some ways that we can make that work. So, because we want to do more to, you know, say thank you for our supporters. We were hindered because of Canada, and so now we just kind of put that aside and said we don't care. We're thanking our supporters, and if Health Canada comes down to us or something like that. Well, fine. I mean, this isn't really traditional sponsorship. It's a thank you page supporting that kind of thing. So we're doing anchor supporter there and then a brand supporter. So if you're US and you want to get in our videos, that's like totally A-OK. And that information is on the website too as well. Monthly rock stars, one-time heroes. And then these are all the brands and awesome brands that over the last 4 years are responsible for bringing RegWatch coverage to you. These guys, all of them need a thank you from our viewers. And some associations too that we've worked with obviously very closely, CVA being one of them, SVADA being great, lots of content. And then these guys right here, fantastic. Project support, a lot of this in 2019, responsible for our epidemic coverage in Canada and our PHE coverage. So can't thank them enough. Can't mention everybody by name, but they're up on RegWatch, and I'll be routinely showing this page and thanking our supporters all the time. And then lastly here, before we get into whatever it is that I have not planned, is down here, this is something you just don't see. I mean, what we've put on our site here is something you don't see. Oh, wait a minute. Were you not seeing any of that? Oh, you weren't seeing any of that, right? Hold on. Frick. All right, just checking you guys here. Ah, Bella. She was on our show just recently. A war on vaping anywhere is a war on vapors everywhere. Let this tyrannical overreach in the U.S. be an example. It lit the fuse on the bomb against vaping across the world. Nice. Ooh, look at that. All right, great. Last thing here, then let me just make sure that I show you. I hope you guys saw the logo wall. I think you did. I think, yeah, I wasn't checking my output there. So there you go. There's the logo wall. That's it. There it is. Awesome. These people rock. All these companies, they made RegWatch possible. And the last thing I just wanted to make sure that you see, because I don't know anybody else that does this. I mean, and I've been in the media game for 30 years. They will do it in, it's like a backhand way somewhere that'll be like a private area or semi-restricted access where kind of what's known as traditionally your media kit is up. So we've thrown what is essentially our media kit up, and that's right here. It's our supporter program. And this is what everybody in the industry, that when we're talking to say, hey, you've got to work with RegWatch, this is what they get. And now you have it too. And we're pretty good at what we do, so you should give this a read. And you can imagine that how strongly we feel rock solid about our content, about our news values, and about our relationship to funding, that we are so confident with that we'd put this deck up for anybody to see. And it says something. And then last is the, oh, right, got to do that down there. There we go. And then the last is the write-up on the Whole Truth series, which if you do one-time funding, we're sticking it in that bucket. And whether we get a whole series done or not, when we get to a number that it makes sense, I'm going to just start working on it and getting some stuff out that's definitive content that makes the case for vaping, that answers the key issues. Maybe I should read this because I have not read this out loud. To you guys yet. The Whole Truth is a RegWatch special series of TV news coverage designed to make the case for vaping. Now, this is an addendum to the campaign that we worked on. Dimmy, a group of us had worked on and advanced that very far this year. Well, late last year, at this time, actually, right up until the new year. That's an advertising campaign that's based on branding, and that's the Whole Truth campaign. This is a series. This is like content that would end up being on the campaign website, where it deals with nicotine, where it deals with teen vaping and that kind of stuff. So we're just going ahead and saying, let's start to work on that content now, because RegWatch can get started on that content now. So it's designed to make the case for vaping. So drawing on our 4 years of in-depth reporting, including dozens of interviews with world-leading scientists, researchers, medical doctors, public health officials, and harm reduction advocates, the Whole Truth counters the misperceptions of vaping while extolling the benefits of this life-saving technology. looking at it like a 6-part series. It's tailored for the public and be pushed out through Facebook ads. So it has to stay news orientated under RegWatch's banner so that we can then properly get the advertising behind it during Facebook, and we can control all that. And so the information's up here. You can see the key thing here is our list of, our kind of shot list of the topics and relationships in which that we want to go after. So, we need to prove that, why is it that vaping is 95% safer than smoking? So this is about gathering all the different sound bites and interviews and stuff like that we've done over 4 years, right up into to date, where it's, handling the 95% safer and making that whole case and getting it into a tight package with graphics and everything else that's easily consumable for the public. And that's across all of the issues here. And then, a great list for people to see, it's also in the deck, is the amazing list of people that we've had on the show. And this is just the more of the authority-based ones that we had. But you start looking at it like Professor John Britton from RCP, Professor Linda Bald, Susie McDonald, Director General of the Tobacco Control Directorate at Health Canada, James Van Loon, same title. You got Public Health England. You just start going down and you're going, oh my God, all these people have been on RegWatch. Some of them more than once, 3 times. And they all want to come back on, as you just saw Mark Tyndall in his 3rd appearance, because they want to come back on and address these issues, the smear that's happening against vaping. So never underestimate the value of the platform for which all these world-class researchers and public health officials, they have nowhere else where they can go, where they know they're going to get great hearing, great coverage, good conversation, and definitely a dig and a pick through the issues. That's my biggest thing, right? It's like we got to keep doing these interviews, right? Okay, so enough of that. All right, have a vape, everybody. Okay. All right. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. I know we do. If I had a better system, I would do a better system. Just did the PayPal option. Greg, thank you, my man. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. Yes, some hearts and loves going out. Thank you. Okay. So what books did I bring? In my mad thinking. So we're going to open books up. I'm going to read. I'm going to rant. No structure. And in fact, I promise you I'm not going to make any sense. But we're going to start to go through some stuff. There'll be some quiet moments while I'm looking for quotes and seeing. So normally when I'm doing these live streams and I try to do something like this, I feel verklempt because I can't see the quote right away, and then all of a sudden I can't see the quote. So I'm just being real relaxed on this, just informing you all. If you got beers, drink them. If you got wine, drink them. If you got vapes, vape them. If you got joints, smoke them. Or, no, don't vape them. All right. So I'm just going to show you which books right now I've got, and then I'll definitely put these in the description. Now, I mentioned this last week. Illiberal Reformers. Race, Eugenics, and American Economics in the Progressive Era. Okay, talk about that. I brought in Steven Pinker, The Blank Slate. Steven Pinker, global author, and I say that because he's a member of the intellectual elite, lives in New York, but he's Canadian. So I didn't want to be flying any Canadian flags here, but he is Canadian. This is 2007. Oh boy, this is a great book. Now, Pinker he's a progressive, right? He's a liberal, for sure. He's a progressive, but this is a great book. I mean, he took huge flack. I don't know how much of a progressive he is anymore. I do know that all of the crazy, you know, banning free speech and all that kind of stuff in the hysteria of 2 years ago, which is, you know, which is in vaping. It's sitting here in this vaping thing. Like I said, right? The hysteria, the social justice is not pink-haired. It's in shiny suits, you know, public health clothing, right? But it's still the same hysteria. Pinker. We'll get into that. Okay. I brought in now. I did actually read a quote to Dr. Shahab, and because you know I did. It was good. It was good. It knocked him. It was good. Aristotle. I can never say Nicomachean. Nicomachean, I think it is. Ethics. Aristotle. So, science. This is the origin of science. Logic. Reason. Everything the progressives hate. When progressives say the science is settled on climate change, they are anti-vapors. because the science is never settled on anything. And they've been using for years the argument, well, the science isn't settled on vaping. The science isn't settled on vaping. We don't really know what it's going to be in 20 years. We have no idea. No, science isn't settled. Same people on the other side will be screaming about how the science is settled on climate change. And on the climate change side, they already have won in terms of demonizing every single academic that would poke his head out to do any kind of research to challenge the orthodoxy of climate science. I mean, that's how science is supposed to be done. So the same system, the same process, the same machinery, right, has now turned 100% on vaping, and they're using this lung illness pretext as a way to attack the fundamental science that supports vaping as a tool for harm reduction. That's what we're going to be talking about with Dr. Shahab, which is why you need to become a monthly supporter of RegWatch, because that's how good we are. Then, science left behind. Feel-good fallacies and the rise of the anti-scientific left. This is a fantastic book, really accessible, copyright 2012. And yes, so there's some stuff. So, I mean, at some point, you know, I'll put all this together and there'll be graphics and shit like that. But right now, I'm just throwing stuff out there in a relaxed kind of atmosphere. I needed a vape. The gear was ready. I still have my makeup on. I hope that's okay. All right. And then, and this one I did bring in with Jacob. This is From Pathology to Politics, Public Health in America. All right. And I'll find a quote out of this one to read. If I can get one quote out of each one of these books and send you on your way, something like that. That's the idea. So the back of this, let's see if the cameras can do that. So the Food and Drink Police. The Food and Drink Police, America's nannies, busybodies, and petty tyrants. Written in a that's like a plug for the book. Written in a lively, engaging style, the food and... Oh, no, that is for the Food and Drink Police. Oh. So I guess there's... Okay. There's something I'll read from there. Now, some of my longtime viewers from like the rant stuff, from testing and the Brent Stafford show, the crazy thing, right, will be familiar with liberal fascism, Jonah Goldberg. And this I did show as well. And Jacob had not read it, and he knows exactly what the book was. I could see him recoil. Because, I mean, this is Jonah's National Review, total, proper conservative, right? I mean, it's fine, William F. Buckley Jr. and the whole bit. This is a devastating book on progressivism. Nobody had dared to write this book, and Jonah wrote this book. Fan-frickin-tastic book. All right. Definitely will try to get to a quote out of that. There's definitely some in there. And what I really do is I need to put an argument together on some of this stuff. All right. So a couple more books. There's more books showing off. Okay. But all right. So a lot of you, most of you, I think all of you, will not be familiar with this name. And that's just a tragedy because he's one of the 20th century's best philosophical writers. Some of you may know if you're on the libertarian side and so forth, but it's Isaiah Berlin. And this is some serious ass figuring out what's going on. Seriously. And it's this book here that's got what I really want to talk about today. So this is The Roots of Romanticism by Isaiah Berlin, with a foreword by John Gray. Now, John Gray is amazing, right? So, there you go. Let me see here. In The Roots of Romanticism, one of the 20th century's most influential philosophers dissects and assesses a movement that changed the course of history. Brilliant, fresh, immediate, and eloquent, these celebrated Mellon lectures are bravura of intellectual performance. Berlin surveys the many attempts to define Romanticism, distills its essence, traces its developments from its first stirrings to its apotheosis, and shows how it still permeates our outlook. He ranges over a cast of some of the greatest thinkers and artists of the 18th and 19th centuries, including Kant, Rousseau, Diderot, Schiller, and the Schlegels, Goethe, Blake, Byron, and Beethoven. The ideas and attitudes of these and other figures, Berlin argues, helped to shape 20th century nationalism, existentialism, democracy, totalitarianism, and our ideas about heroic individuals, self-fulfillment, and the exalted place of art. This new edition illustrated for the first time, and John Gray, in which John Gray discusses Berlin's belief that the influence of Romanticism has been unpredictable and contradictory in the extreme, fueling anti-liberal political movements, but also reinvigorating liberalism. That's the interesting thing about Romanticism. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, progressivism is Romanticism. Progressivism is not a bastard child of, it's not even a child of. It actually is of the same form as Romanticism. And then you're like, oh, well, Romanticism? What the hell's that? Some of you probably have heard it because it gets dropped all the time because progressives mention it, all the time because, of course, they have to control the past. That's a critical aspect to what progressivism is and does. So they're always refer to the Romantic movement in its literary form. So your Byron, your Shelley, and all that kind of stuff. So you might be familiar with that. The Romantic movement in painting, right? It's art, the Romantic movement, everything else. Sure. But that's just all sheen. That's just all stuff to gloss over the deep-seated ideology that is Romanticism. It is the ideology that drives progressivism. Now, there's another term for it. This one is definitely out there. George Santayana, also 20th century, brilliant philosopher in the early part of the 20th century, Harvard historian, Spanish, not from Spain, maybe from Spain or Portugal, one of the areas there, but American citizen living in New York, and tons of stuff that he said that has entered into our understanding of politics and everything else. And he terms Romanticism, rightly so, in fact, as German egoism. So, and it's absolutely correct. Romanticism is not a French ideology. It's a German ideology. All right. A lot of people will think about Romanticism because on the literary side, you've got Shelley and Byron and stuff, which are, English. So you're kind of got your head this mixed thing on the Romanticism side. You've got this strong literary aspect that comes out of England, but Romanticism actually starts much earlier than those writers, and it's not an English phenomenon, nor is it a French Revolution phenomenon or pre-French Revolution of the French elite, right? So Romanticism is an actual revulsion against the Enlightenment. It is the German response, like an allergic response that a body has to something foreign that's entered into it, it's infected it, right? And so that's the foundation of Romanticism. Now, there's always a caveat, right? The caveat is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was definitely French. No two ways about that. He is definitely an early father of Romanticism, but it moved in other ways, keeping critical aspects of Rousseau that are anchors to this day. But to understand the intense desire to destroy all structure inside anything that the Romantic ideology takes hold of. So German egoism, the other terms for it are existentialism or transcendentalism. Got a lot of different words, right? But you have to understand this, and I'll make some sense of this. So transcendentalism, you kind of got an idea what that is. It's kind of this airy-fairy or intense turning inward, right? It's this inward turn. So keep in mind that the Reformation of the Church, Catholic, which is now the Catholic Church, but it was just Christianity, the Reformation, right? That is the cleavage that starts the whole ball rolling, opening the door for the Enlightenment, secularism, and Romanticism, really, and then progressivism being the 20th century version of it. So, all right, let me try to piece this together here. Okay, so the hierarchy that existed in Christianity, the church, right, was not just a church thing. It was obviously the entire society and culture for 1,500 years. And, it was a hierarchy. And yes, there was oppression. And yes, there was, serfs and blah. I mean, all of that means nothing because, the history of mankind is one of hierarchies and power structures. I mean, there's no such thing as equal outcomes. I mean, that's never happened. And to even consider that is obviously what we've seen what happened in the 20th century and where the progressives are trying to take us today. And all of this is wrapped up in vaping, trust me. And so the Reformation of the church, basically comes down to one key thing to understand about right now. It was to say, I as an individual can have my own relationship with God. I do not need a church, a hierarchy of any structure at all in between me and God. That is revolutionary when it comes to Christianity. And there's only one God. It's monotheism, right? And that obviously, it's 1,500 years, but it was new, right? It's the same God as the Jewish God and the same God as the Muslim God. So, so this Reformation is this really for the first time, this explosion of the concept of individuality, right? It didn't exist before that. Every single person that lives today, that's alive in the West, lives in the dominant hegemonic ideology of individualism up until about 3 years ago. because that's what they're attacking, my friends, right? Vaping is about your personal right as an individual to make choices about what to put in your own body. That comes directly from the Protestant Reformation of the Church, the breaking away from the authority structure and saying I can have my own relationship with God. And it's not just my own relationship with God, but at the same time, of course, the explosion of the printing press and the democracy of the Bible. Basically, that's what happens as it gets put into German, and it gets put into English, and pretty much everybody can get their own Bible. That happened very, very, very quickly. And so what the Protestantism is in relationship to the Reformation, which is its founding core, is that it's not just you can have your own relationship with God, but it's that you can come to your own understanding of who God is and what that means to you. And so the mediation that happened from all these layers of hierarchy wasn't just in your way. They also told you exactly what your beliefs should be in terms of what God is. Now, you had that ability to do that as an individual. Nobody gave it to you, by the way. This is a thing that happened in humanity, right? It is an offspring of the darker time in medieval time. Jordan Peterson and others talk about how Nietzsche even brought this up for sure, was that humanity probably needed that huge heavy pressure down from the church as humanity was not evolving, because that's a long form time, but civilization was progressing, right, to use the word. And so the very thing that it gave birth to, right, killed it. So the Enlightenment, it's like one of those things. It's like what Karl Marx said and Engels said about communism and socialism. You absolutely can't have communism, socialism, until you have capitalism. It's fundamental. That is 100% pure Marx. You need to have socialism you need to have capitalism in a flourishing mode, right? People need to be getting a lot of wealth, right, from capitalism before you can have socialism, communism. And so socialism, communism is the latter stage of the progress of economic relationships of man to labor from capitalism. So those places that kind of jump over that, right, which is what happened in Russia, right, which arguments get made all the time. Well, if they had let capitalism develop there and had done it properly as Marx wanted to have, then it might not have turned into, 60 million, 70 million debt. But anyhow, I digress, and that was definitely a digression. The reason why I bring that up, let me get back to it, is that the argument that Jordan Peterson and Nietzsche had made is that, or Jordan made after Nietzsche, was that we needed the church. We needed that oppressive structure there. And that structure actually then gave birth, right, through the Reformation, individuality, and which then led to the Enlightenment, the reacquisition of ancient knowledge of the West. And yes, that was actually thanks to a lot of protecting of books and stuff like that by Islamic communities and so forth. So that's totally true. 1300, 1400, the West rediscovered Aristotle. And that, boom, So, okay. So the individual. So your individual right to decide what you put in your own body is 100% directly related to the Reformation. Now, it is that concept of the individual that the progressives absolutely hate. And you're like, how could that be? How could the progressives hate the individual? I mean, so many of them, I mean, Christ's sakes, I mean, we live with them. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, there are friends, neighbors, family, and all that kind of stuff, teachers and everything else. How can that be the case, right? Well, it is the case. And so Thomas Leonard, a liberal reformers, he's a Princeton University professor and author. He's no radical like right wing or anything like that. And in fact, a lot of material that you can read on progressives is written by progressives themselves. But you got to find the stuff that is like inside the university system. So, okay, so let's do quotes. Yeah, that's a good one. But can I go there first? Okay. All right, so let's see here, guys. Like I said, just going to start reading some stuff. This is building the fourth branch in Wisconsin. So you may have heard me say this on more than one occasion. I'll mention Wisconsin. It's because it's the birthplace of progressivism in the U.S. Germany is on the other side, right? Building the fourth branch in Wisconsin. The progressive economists... Oh, last. Okay, so there is the progressive part of progressivism that got totally caught up in eugenics. I mean, eugenics is progressive. I mean, I've got a billion quotes from people on the left writing. They will absolutely acquiesce that. The entire eugenics movement is a progressive movement. So that's that's the big racist movement. All of this is the first progressive president was Woodrow Wilson, who, was the Princeton University president and became president, and 100% progressive, like 100%. And World War I was a progressive war. And yeah, so, right. So I bring this up because there's that chunk, which you don't get a lot of, and you're supposed to like, oh, don't talk about that, right? Rightly so. And they've done a very good job of, see, this is the lying that they have to do, which is so easy for them with vaping, because they are galactic, universe level masters at lying, right? At changing language, at making one thing be the other, right? So you all think, so many people think, right, that Hitler was a conservative, that Nazis somehow were like Republicans. No, Nazis are like the Democratic Party. In fact, they are, right? Hitler was a progressive. So was Mussolini. So, all of my stuff here, we won't get into proving that because it's an easy one to prove. But, it's just an easy one. So let me read this. This is about the economic side of progressives, because that was key for them, the antitrust and busting stuff up. So this is interesting. The progressive economics established a beachhead in the universities by 1900 and in AALL type think tanks soon after. Right. Okay, hold on. I'm going to have to jump back on this. Yeah, hold on a second. Okay. Okay, so the AAAL is, I'm just trying to get it because it's, yeah, that's the problem here, is because it is like right up front. It's the AALL is the American Association for Labor Legislation. All right, so that's who that is. And progressives are responsible for starting the very first, well, they created it out of whole cloth, the profession of economics in the U.S. And that, imported out of Germany. So they were trained in Germany. So the American Economics Association and all that kind of stuff, 100% progressive. And the total goal is to create an administrative state, right, which can then employ these bureaucrats and elite technocrats to help manage people and everything. That's exactly what it is. So, okay, so I'm going to back up 2 pages. So hang tight, sit in. Historians, this section of the chapter is called Progressives, Left and Right. I may not agree with all of this either, but here we go. Historians ordinarily characterize such AAL stalwarts as Irving Fisher, Henry Farnham, and Frank Taussig as conservatives, which is adequate as first approximation. None of them were evangelical firebrands, like their colleagues Ely, Commons, and Henderson, and they were situated in the colonial era colleges, Harvard and Yale, which stood at one remove from the hubs of economic reform at Johns Hopkins, Wisconsin, Columbia, and Pennsylvania. But these men were also labor legislation activists, entirely committed to the idea, as Fisher put it, that, quote, not only can society be reformed, but to do so is the principal service of economic and social sciences, end quote. Farnham, heir to the New Haven Railroad fortune, funded the AALL out of his own pocket in its early years. The AALL reminds us that progressivism was first and foremost an attitude about the proper relationship of science and its bearer, the scientific expert, to the state, and of the state to the economy and polity. University-certified experts advised or served the administrative state in the fourth branch of government, which investigated and regulated economic life in the name of an expert-identified common good. But progressive is a political term, and political historians tend to do an ideological end. Excuse me, let me reread that. Okay, I ended up picking a good one. See, I start reading and the names are there, and I'm thinking, oh man, you're not going to know who these are. You're tuning out. But then this was a good paragraph. So it's worth reading again, but not the names part. Progressivism was first and foremost an attitude about the proper relationship of science and its bearer, the scientific expert, to the state, and of the state to the economy and polity. University-certified experts advised or served the administrative state in the fourth branch of government, which investigated and regulated economic life in the name of an expert-identified common good. But progressive is a political term, and political historians tend to an ideological lens. Ideology is a useful tool of taxonomy, but when it is reduced to one dimension, it is the enemy of nuance. Forcing the progressives to be left and their critics to be right multiplies misconceptions. Theodore Roosevelt was a conservative, but he must be counted among the progressives. Call him a right progressive, but Roosevelt was an exemplary progressive. Campaigning for president atop the Progressive Party ticket, Roosevelt ran on a platform that repudiated the laissez-faire theory of political economy and fearlessly championed a system of increased government control. Right progressives, no less than left progressives, were illiberal, glad to subordinate individual rights to their reading of the common good. American conservative thinking was never especially anti-statist. On the contrary, its Hamiltonian tradition had long been identified with vigorous national government, which is precisely what Herbert Croly had in mind when he famously defined progressivism as Hamiltonian means to Jeffersonian ends. Consider reform economics bête noire. William Graham Sumner, the man whose influence Eli, I think, is one of the famous progressive guys, said he had organized the AEA, that's the American Economics Association. So, I mean, The entire field of economics defined, its profession was created in order to create the administrative state and to feed in trained scientists to grow government and control people. Ooh, that sounded pretty... All right. If progressives are understood to be left, then Sumner must be right. But Sumner was no conservative. He was a classical liberal. A one-dimensional analysis elides this vital distinction. As a liberal, Sumner believed that individuals constitute and are prior to society. The progressives, who are a liberal, believe that society believed that society comprises and is prior to the individual. Listen to that. It's critical. Progressives who were illiberal, which is most, but not all. That's the distinction he's making here. Is not all progressives were liberal. Keep in mind, he's describing here human beings that lived in the United States of America and were responsible deeply for the trajectory and growth of the country. And we're talking about a time here, I think, around the 1910s. That timing. No, 1898. Okay, so just at the turn of the century. Real human beings living in the United States, and this is the way they think political parties. Theodore Roosevelt was a president. He actually ran on the Progressive Party ticket. Okay, the progressives who were illiberal believe that society comprises and is prior to the individual. So the individual does not have supreme rights. Society does. Society is prior to the individual. And that certainly is absolutely 100% definition of illiberal. And that's what we're facing here right now. That is, and this is why we're doing this. What about the kids? You got to save the kids. Why is it the kids? How come they can take adult human beings' liberties away in order to save the kids? Well, it's really easy when you understand that progressives who are illiberal, which is all of them now, well, whatever. They're mind parasites, to quote Gadsad. So the people that are anti-vaping are illiberal. So enough said. So the progressives who are anti-vaping, right, they don't believe that the individual is before society. They believe society is prior to the individual. So then you start to get it and you go, okay, they just step on you. You're an ant, right? That's just the way they are. That's the thinking. That's the entire ideology. And I keep saying it's an ideology. It's an ideology. It's an ideology. It can be an ideology that's like up in like that one sentence there. Once that sentence connects to you, you go, holy crap, that can explain a lot of it. It explains all of it, right? There's a lot more to wrap around it, but progressives who were illiberal, so I'm just saying progressives who are illiberal, and those are anti-vapors, right, believe that society comprises and is prior to the individual. So yeah, society contains individuals, but society is prior to the individual. Sumner defended free markets, which earned him the progressives' enmity. A consistent defender of limited government, Sumner also denounced American imperialism and colonialism. He loudly criticized the Spanish-American War of 1898 as a petty 3-month campaign, and he served as an officer in the American Anti-Imperialism League, a group organized to oppose U.S. annexation of the Philippines. Many progressives, most famously Roosevelt, but also Ely, Ross, Commons, and others among the progressive social scientists, were enthusiastic about American empire. If advocacy of American empire was made right, then a one-dimensional analysis must place the progressives on the right. So think about that. Today, because like I said, they got to always be lying and moving and shifting. So when they paint the picture of, let's say right now, when you see any movie, TV show, or let's
think of something that was done in the 90s or 2000s or something even, and it was capturing that time of the temperance movement. You can bet that whatever that piece of content you're watching is, you're going to come away thinking that those people that advocated the temperance movement were just crazy right-wingers, like just rigid and just horrible, horrible religious people, right? And you're going to come away thinking right, because progressives want you to think that, except for the fact that progressives were that. They were them. They rewrite their own history and blame it on their opponents. They do it all the time. If advocacy of American empire was made right, and that means on the right, which they have made that, they absolutely have made that to be on the right. Well, how could that be? Because Roosevelt was, crazy. All right. Okay. So again, fourth branch in Wisconsin. So the fourth branch. So for those of you who are not in the U.S., you may not understand the branches. For those in the U.S., you may not understand the branches. But the branches, the three branches, the executive branch, that's the president, and all of the administrative state, basically. So all regulatory agencies and stuff actually get their power. They get their power to act, on a regular daily basis through the executive branch, right? But the legislative branch makes the laws to create agencies, and so they've got control to that extent. But what's happened in almost all cases, and this is one of the things that progressives desired for, was to offload the actual regulation, like the actual making of the laws. So the laws get made, but nothing gets done there. Those are just frameworks, as we all know, for then the regulatory body, which is unelected, unaccountable, to make the real laws, which they can change at any time. And that's the progressives in the administrative state, the agencies, public health, right? All of them, right? So that's being created right here in what I'm reading. Progressives believe that, because of course, if you don't believe that the individual is a priori, right, is first, right, that society is, right? Well, they hate the Constitution of the United States of America then, because it's all about the individual. And they created the three branches of government in a way where it's very difficult to change the whole government at one time. That's the balancing act that goes on with the three branches of government, right? And the third is the judiciary, executive, legislative, judiciary. And so they all operate in different ways, in different timing, and different modes. And so they're supposed to counteract each other. And that counteracting isn't necessarily, in some cases, we believe all the time, in order to check completely, say, one branch that might go crazy, Trump and executive power. Oh, we need to check his power. It's actually designed, because it was designed before the administrative state. You have to understand the Constitution of the United States and its whole raison d'etre, right, was designed pretty much to prevent the development of the administrative state. And yet, thus, here we have it, imported from Germany, thank you very much, and our good friends in Wisconsin. So they hate the Constitution because the Constitution prevents whole-scale government changes. It prevents things from getting done without the people involved, really. So what is it, a regulatory agencies, what is its grand thing that it can do? It can do whatever it wants, right? It could just simply do whatever it wants. That's not democracy. So when a progressive is screaming about democracy, when a Bernie Sanders supporter or an Elizabeth Warren supporter gets on their high horse about democracy and about, bringing power back to the people and blah, 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 then they should be challenged to say, well, so then the first thing you're going to do is close down The FDA, right? Or the EPA, right? Name a single federal agency you're going to shut down. There won't be a single one. Everyone's going to grow. So they're not for democracy. Not at all. The people are not involved in regulatory decisions. Zero. In fact, zero, right? The consultation process is designed to affirm decisions. All right. Building the fourth branch. So the fourth branch is the administrative state. In Wisconsin, the progressive economists established a beachhead in the universities by 1900 and in AALL-type think tanks soon after. The university supplied their scientific bona fides, and the think tanks provided them a shelter for advocacy that more or less safeguarded their claim to scientific objectivity. Both institutions would provide essential and permanent homes for American economics. One more time. Remember, they created economics. They created the discipline. They created the departments. They created the associations. There was nothing. Economics was not done. Nothing. Progressives out of whole cloth that were trained in Germany. The progressive economists established a beachhead in the universities by 1900 and in AALL-type think tanks soon after. The university supplied their scientific bona fides, and the think tanks provided them a shelter for advocacy that more or less safeguarded their claim to scientific objectivity. Both institutions would provide essential and permanent homes for American economics. But the big prize was government. Professors and think tankers might move elite opinion some, but suasion went only so far. Government compulsion promised economic reform that was faster and farther reaching. The first prototype of American administrative government was built in Wisconsin. Governor Robert La Follette, the Republican progressive, a Republican progressive. Sorry, it's getting late. I don't even know if there's anybody still watching. Yay, PayPal. Let me just look. Do I still have people watching? Heil Hitler. Jerry Reed. I don't think anyone's on anymore, but that's okay. Let me check YouTube. YouTube. Yay. YouTube's still alive. Yay, YouTube. A pure democracy always fails. That's good. All right. I'm just going to finish this last page and a half and then tie something up, and then it's good for tonight. So, again, I keep saying, right, that you have to understand there's progressives on the right. Like, oh my God. And like so much so, in the very first state, that was the first progressive state where progressivism flourished, is Wisconsin. Unbelievable. And Minnesota, too, has got a huge progressive streak, but I don't need to tell anybody in Minnesota that. You know that, right? So the first big prize was government. Professors and think tankers might move elite opinion some, but suasion only went so far. Government compulsion promised economic reform that was faster and farther reaching. The first prototype of American administrative government was built in Wisconsin. The governor, who was a Republican progressive, empowered the University of Wisconsin faculty and unleashed them on the state. By 1908, all the economists and 1/6 of the university's entire faculty held appointments on Wisconsin government's commissions, including Charles Van Hise, the university president. Commons, whom Eli had recruited to Madison in 1904, traveled the street connecting the university and the state capitol so regularly he wore a groove into it. But Commons and his allies got legislation that established regulatory commissions, restricted working hours, fixed minimum wages, regulated utilities, and compensated industrial accident victims. By 1912, 2 books extolling the Wisconsin idea had been published: Wisconsin, an Experiment in Democracy, and The Wisconsin Idea, written by Frederick Howe and Charles McCarthy. Howe had been a student of Eli's at Johns Hopkins, receiving his Ph.D. in 1892, the same year Eli left Baltimore to direct Wisconsin's freshly founded School of Economics, Political Science, and History. Howe claimed that the partisans and politicians made obsolete by university experts like Commons had all but disappeared from the State House in Madison. The field was left to the experts, who carried scientific efficiency into every department of the Commonwealth, not least the dairy industry. In Wisconsin, President Van Hise said proudly, "Political science has moved away from political and toward science." Howe described Wisconsin as a scientific laboratory of reform. Wisconsin, he said, was already the most efficient commonwealth in the United States, a model for America just as Germany was for the world. Germany was the world's most advanced scientific state because it had been the first to call in the experts, but Wisconsin was not far behind. McCarthy's account proposed that German heredity was also at work. Wisconsin was a German state. Because so many Wisconsinites were of Teutonic stock, 48ers and their descendants, the Wisconsin idea breathlessly described Richard T. Eli as a pupil of German professors who returned from Germany with German political ideals to teach a German-inspired economics at a German university, the University of Wisconsin, in the German state of Wisconsin, where the young men he most inspired were, yes, of German stock. Theodore Roosevelt, who wrote a flattering introduction to McCarthy's book, was unfazed, perhaps because he was in search of votes, or perhaps because he himself had imbibed a large draft of Teutonism in his graduate student days at Columbia. Teutonism is the pre National Socialism kind of term for master race. It's not a master race, but it's the German race, the supreme race kind of thing. As we shall see again in Chapter 7, Germany could make certain American progressives. So as we'll see again in Chapter 7, Germany could make certain American progressives weak in the knees. Here was a state that truly understood the values of ideas, John Dewey observed in 1915. John Dewey is, again, one of the other, famous, huge progressives, like one of the top 20th century. So he's 1915 and past. He redefined what it meant for education in America. John Dewey, just look it up. Google John Dewey, right? He's venerated to this day for everything that he brought, and that's directly connected to our vaping problem. So here was a state that truly understood the value of ideas, John Dewey observed in 1915. Germany had arranged its educational and administrative agencies to ensure that scientific ideas informed practical affairs. German higher education, Dewey said, was, quote, really not just nominally under the control of the state. Really not just nominally under the control of the state. It was under the control of the state. State control ensured, so he's talking about education, right? State control ensured that it had direct access to the best ideas and a ready supply of university graduates to staff its professional civil service. The bureaucracy. Even better, Dewey noted, Germany subordinated its legislature to the bureaucracy, which conducted the real business of government. administration. And that, my friends, is exactly where we are. Fantastic book. Okay, it's an easy read, right? You don't need to have read Marx or have been deep in like crazy graduate school stuff or anything like that to get this book and have it connect. This is Race Eugenics, a Liberal Reformers, Race Eugenics, and American Economics in the Progressive Era. Highly recommend this book. So I'm going to leave that there, and we're going to wrap. I see some people have done some support. Thank you so much. For those of you who haven't yet, just know, seriously, man, I'll take your $5 a month every day of the week and corral thousands of you together. Seriously, man, let's do it, right? Doesn't need to be big numbers. I've never done this before, right? Like traditional news guy for a long time, advertising. And, we built RegWatch not to, and RegWatch is going to continue to be interviewing the top scientists, hopefully more of the top politicians and regulators, right? So there's only a certain place we can go before the crowdfunding thing won't work because, I can't get too crazy. But I'll start calling people Hitler. But I'm going to want some bigger monthly support than for that. We can prove progressives are the real fascists. We can do that. Yes, we can. But, All right, guys. Let me leave you with this. Okay. So, if we understand, because I keep saying ideology all the time, we're now getting some glimpses into it. It's a big process to put this picture together. So we know that progressives who are anti-vaping, right, they are illiberal, right? And those that are liberal progressives, they believe that while society is constituted by individuals, they believe that the society is prior to the individual, which means that your needs and rights don't matter when the society's needs and rights matter more. And the kids are always going to matter more. So this is the crux of the what about the kids? This is the crux of the whole thing. That's the key thing. But there's something else. There's something else that starts to expand on that. That's the easy one-liner. But let's get into this for a second. I'll be closing on this, but it's going to take more than 30 seconds. But here we go. Okay? All right. So I mentioned Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So this is 1750, 1760. Yes. And French, before the Revolution. Revolution happens thanks to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Robespierre is the Jean-Jacques Rousseau wannabe, extravagant, whatever, flourished. So Rousseau basically brings for the first time ever, and I'll contradict that in another video, for the first time ever, the concept, and a lot of you have heard me say this, that human beings are naturally born good, right? That's it. I say that a lot. You've heard that from Jordan Peterson. You've heard that from others, for sure. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to use another great 20th century writer, James Burnham, describes this perfectly. So, and I've mentioned this, is that they believe that every single human being, when they're born, is a blank slate. And that's what this book is about, taking that down, right? Is a blank slate, tabula rasa, meaning that the only thing that determines them, right, is the social institutions, which is family, school, the whole bit, society, the social institutions of civilization, of the society that individual lives in, and education. So faulty social institutions and ignorance are the only reasons why a human being goes bad. So they literally do not believe in personal responsibility. It's anathema to their thinking. They just don't believe it. Because in the end, if somebody does something that's truly bad, and whatever on the scale continuum of bad is, in the end, it's not their fault. It is the fault of faulty social institutions or ignorance. So just like progressives deal with guns and say, it's the gun that's the problem. Guns kill, right? Where people who are pro-gun, say, well, technically, yeah, you're kind of right about that, but no, really, it's actually people kill people. The gun's just a gun, right? But, crazy progressives, insane progressives, right? You don't know it's the gun. It's the gun that's doing it. And the whole narrative and everything, it's about the gun. It's about the gun. It's about the gun. Well, they've done that exact same thing with e-cigarettes, right? It's the e-cigarettes that's the problem. And, and obviously conflated with deaths and illnesses that has nothing even to do with it, right? But that's the progressive way, right? They're treacherous, right? Really treacherous. Malevolent. I mean, it's unbelievable. You live with these people. They run our world, right? For you to be surprised that they're doing this it should be your own red pill. I mean, it's pretty shocking, no doubt. So, all right. So, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. People are born good. Only faulty social institutions and ignorance makes them go bad. They don't believe in responsibility. So that's why it's not entered into any of this conversation. That's why the kid is not responsible that sticks the 5 jewels in their face. None of them. None of them are responsible. Neither are their parents. Zero, right? So, and this comes from the ideology. Let's see if I can find this. So, Rousseau, all that Rousseau said is that we live in a corrupt society. We live in a bad, hypocritical society where men lie to each other and murder each other and are false to each other. It is possible to discover the truth. This truth is to be discovered not by means of sophistication or Cartesian logic, but by looking within the heart of the simple, uncorrupt human being, the noble savage, or the child, or whoever it may be. Once this truth is discovered, it is an eternal truth for all men everywhere, in all climes and seasons. And when we have discovered this truth, then it is important that we should live in accordance with it. So the noble savage concept is Rousseauian, right? So that's that, adoration, the virtuizing of the savage, the Indian, the uncivilized, the people who live, the back-to-landers, who were never even civilized, right? And they have the virtue, right? They have the virtue. We civilized people do not. We're the oppressors. We're the blah. We are soiled. So what Berlin is writing here, talking about what Rousseau was saying, is that we live in a corrupt society. We live in a bad, hypocritical society where men lie to each other and murder each other and are false to each other. It is possible, though, to discover the truth. This truth is to be discovered not by means of sophistication, but by looking within the heart of the simple, uncorrupted human being, the noble savage, or the child, or whoever it may be. Once this truth is discovered, it is an eternal truth for all men, everywhere, in all climes and seasons. And when we have discovered this truth, then it is important that we should live in accordance with it. Within the child is it is the height of the virtue for the progressive. It is where truth comes from. That's why when if you knew anything about education before, there used to be like rules and stuff you have to learn and everything. And over the last 30 years, it's devolved into, whatever the kids want to learn is just great. I learned so much as a teacher from all my students. Here, Johnny, go be Jane. Jane, you're Johnny. Yeah, Johnny, do you want to be Jane? No, it's just like there's nothing. It's nothing. It's like the kids, they're just, we learned they're so, right? But it's true. That is exactly what it is. The truth is inside the simple heart of the human being. So there's nothing simpler and more noble than the child. So they've structured all education, our understanding of history, the whole world around, in order to create their better men, right? That's what progressives are trying to do. They're trying to create a better man. That's through social engineering. That's this process of taking kids who they believe have a blank slate and then controlling everything around it to create a new generation of human beings that have socially evolved to utopia, to progressive utopia. And when shit gets in the way of that, they go insane. And vaping got in the way of that. They thought they had this generation. They have this generation thinking there's no difference between boys and girls. They actually have this entire generation, maybe two generations, thinking that there is no such difference. And to even bring it up, you're a bigot and a racist. What? Progressives have created that. Why? Because they're trying to engineer the better human being. Because their fascination with the children is because it's through them that they can get to salvation. Because progressives are religious. Diabolically. They don't even understand they're religious. Right? Their salvation is through the engineering of children into the thing, the egalitarian, who knows? I mean, whatever it is, it's going to be the death of hundreds of millions of people on this planet. And when they get away with what they're getting away with vaping, at this level, you got the president complaining, and Melania, I mean, even how many people? Come on, right? That's the danger. It's unbelievable. This is really a grab of power that is not unprecedented, because there's plenty of examples through history where just the same kind of thing has happened, right? And did not turn out well. No. So, all right, there you go. Vaping got in the way of the social evolution of these generations of kids that they thought they had their better man. And it's not. And they can't get to heaven, which is a heaven on earth, right? That's the progressive song. You know, heaven is a place on earth. Ooh, baby, it's a, right? That's progressive song. It's a progressive religious song. That's gospel for progressivism. It's not just some song. It's a religious song. Anyhow, that's where they're trying to get to. Heaven is a place on earth. It's the progressive utopian. They can't get there until they've engineered that generation or two of kids that become the adults that take them to the promised land. So that, my friends, is it. Again, please go to support.regulatorwatch.com. Monthly contributions would be awesome if you could. As large as you can would be great. Remember, you do get a business receipt from us, and it is good for category marketing in Canada and the US and Europe. You can, if you've got a business, you can use it to write off. Of course, one-time donations will go into our Whole Truth campaign bucket. And if you're in the States and in Europe, your dollars and euros go so far. We love to have them here in Canada. In fact, we will kiss European ass. I will stop talking about progressives. I will start waving, some kind of European. No, I can't do it. I think Europe is really the heart of the problem. But anyhow, there we go. And so support.regulatorwatch.com. And we have Michael Siegel, Dr. Siegel, coming up on Friday. He's going to be updating us on a whole bunch of stuff. And then we've got Dr. Leon Shahab's video coming out soon. And thank you very much. Thank you for watching. I'm Brent Stafford, and this has been RegWatch Rant. Have a good one.